Rick and Morty comic issue 54. We start out with Beth being a bad mother, because when Morty's excitedly discussing the movie they saw, she says that she doesn't want to listen to his thoughts on it afterwards, and asks him to go on the internet to talk movies like most friendless kids his age. Wow. I'd hate her if she was always like this. But thankfully she's nice to him more often than not. I'm so glad, Morty says. Geez, it's like you don't even have to start drinking to sound like a grandpa anymore. Too bad he's not drawn to have an appropriate expression, because this is the same panel where he's smiling eating a cheese cube. Then they get threatened with ceiling lasers, because since Rick owes the Grumbleflexes some money because of Jerry, everything in Rick's house is theirs. Beth shows faith in Rick, because at first she assumes the lasers aren't Rick's, and then she figures out that they're just there to deter intruders. I love that the alien says, "Our compliments to the designer," so even they want to compliment Rick for how cool he is. But why do they have to force Morty not to eat that cheese cube? At least he ate one. Then comic space is wasted on us seeing another of the Grumbleflex ads for their pyramid scheme, where it says that an alien died in their name after giving up a rich life. Jerry tells Summer not to say douche. I like that actually, because he's acting like a realistic father for a change, not the stereotypical bumbling cartoon dad just because he's animated. Rick then mocks him, telling him not to say douche since he swears all the time. Most of this page is also a complete waste of time, where Summer recaps to the audience what happened in the last issue. It's not Archie Sonic. Usually the comic doesn't waste their time like this. But at least the recap is kind of justified in universe because Rick and Summer want to make fun of Jerry and call him out as a villain. So they want to explain to him why he screwed up. And somehow Jerry thinks it's a good idea to put sunglasses on and say he's cool. So naturally Rick lashes out, saying that he hopes the ship crashes and kills him. He's not really that much better than Rick if he thinks that being the villain of the story makes him cool. Then we see some aliens we don't know at an office in a setting relatable to a lot of people, where they're gonna get cake for someone's baby shower. It's interesting that one of them says he doesn't want Carol to think he approves of her replicating again. Then he says that she ate her last 4 kids, so a baby shower isn't appropriate. Wait, how is that legal? What a weird alien society, they would have gone extinct by now. Maybe it's legal as a form of population control, and it's not like nobody disapproves of it. I mean, they can replicate literally anytime they want, can't they? It's not like it's really restricted, so I guess it would make sense that some of them would have a lesser value of human life than others. They'd still think of that as cannibalism. Then after these guys are humanized in a boring page, as I wonder how she kept her job, Rick's spaceship crashes through the wall, and Rick sees what weapons he has under the seats. Oh, that's impressive that he actually thought to do that. He says there's a whole galactic interchange where he can't be seen right now, and that has to do with a game of Death Duel and the exact definition of brunette. So they'll have to take a detour to get back out of here. I hate the lack of a discretion shot with Jerry getting sick, but it tries to be realistic since the spaceship did crash, even though none of them are injured with whiplash or anything regardless. So you'd think the spaceship's interior would activate a stasis field to lock them all in place whenever the spaceship crashes through something, and then deactivate it, which was why Summer was in a different position. Why didn't you have her seatbelt on? My point is the same logic behind why they're not injured from any time the spaceship crashes into something should apply to Jerry not being motion sick. I guess he's just that scared. Then Rick actually shows some human regret because he realizes that all of these aliens are literally just sitting here working, and says, "Suddenly I really regret this. Man, I don't want to shoot these people. Ugh." This is why he's still a good protagonist. He does some bad things, but they go out of their way to make him sympathetic sometimes. He says that they could have probably just hacked instead of doing this. Then a bunch of aliens threaten him with ray guns, scaring them all away. The woman assumes Rick and his family were new recruits looking for a hard-to-find parking garage, and she wanted the worst salesmen to block the first volley with their bodies. It's interesting how the Grumbleflexes go out of their way to be outlandishly bad employers. And the scheme's illegal anyways, so of course they're like this while they're at it. Rick snarks that they shouldn't go back to the old arc, lampshading that he's been a jerk for a while recently, and should use his powers for good before he gets unsympathetic. This line would have made a lot more sense if he said this right after that arc where he was a drug dealer. He's speaking more meta-like, which confuses me, but he's seen a lot of TV, so fine. He wants Summer to go somewhere else while Jerry and him fight their way from the bottom to the top of the building. You'd think he'd trust Summer more since she's a badass, so she'd be a better fighter instead of the wuss. I guess it's because he values Summer's life more than Jerry's, so he'd rather keep her safe over there. Since he basically repeats himself 3 times here and gets excited about fighting 100 guys, I'm wondering if he's actually not gonna have to fight much at all as a twist. Because when you try too hard to build up to something happening, sometimes it looks more like it's telegraphing a twist, because why else would that dialogue be there? Rick says Summer's a new hire, so she has to go upstairs and get sorted into a house. Summer wishes she could go fight stuff instead, being relatably mad. If all she's gonna have to do here is sit, why am I even seeing this scene for more than one panel? This is way too repetitive. The only possible purpose could be that they think it's funny, but it's not funny. The previous issue already told us that people are selling stuff when nobody knows what they're selling. Why not just spend that startup fee money on cooking ingredients and hold a bake sale? She's in orientation, and by standing out and questioning things, she's not doing a good job. I totally get why she'd want this catharsis though, but she's just attracting attention and putting herself in danger. Meanwhile, as Jerry and Rick are walking down the stairs, Rick says that Jerry's holding a weapon wrong, and calls him out that when he talks like he really wants to shoot after he's been kicked enough, it's more terrifying than inspiring. Also, Summer's somehow mistaken for a boy and threatened with demotion, when it seems like the Grumbleflexes have the same female hairstyles. They look a lot like humans themselves, so why are they having a hard time telling the difference between various humans? They're just red humans. But I guess she's mistaken for a boy because of her head, and the fact that sometimes men do wear ponytails, like samurai. And she's unfamiliar with humans and from another planet. As Jerry and Rick still aren't fighting, Jerry says, "I don't get who works here. I thought the whole point was to work from home." And he says he didn't read the fine print when he signed up under Rick's name. He just scrolled to the bottom and clicked the box, like a lot of people. Rick tells Jerry that when they get down there, they should just pretend they fought a bunch of guys. Meanwhile, the female alien's really annoying me because she says she read the wiki about human culture, and yet somehow still thinks she called Summer the right thing, even though she has a human correcting her. And she calls Summer rude when she was the one who made a mistake, obviously. Summer's even wearing pink. But I guess pink isn't a female color exclusively on this planet. I mean, even in human culture, pink wasn't always considered just a girl's color. Rick kicks the door open, lying, and Summer says cathartically, "Oh, finally!" And she even stabs the annoyance in the neck with a pen. And again, I like that she has blue blood, so it's not that bad to look at. The pen makes her turn white as Rick is shocked that someone just stabbed her. He at least doesn't judge, I guess, because that'd be really hypocritical. He just says, "Wow." You'd think he'd know she's a badass by now after the Deathstalkers episode. So the awful woman turns into a pyramid of white light and flies away, leading the heroes to the top of a literal pyramid. Which is great for making the issue memorable as a PSA about not trusting pyramid schemes. Rick, after looking creeped out, mentioning the next stab and saying that that gets you on the pyramid, smirks while trying to do the same thing to Jerry. Actually, this had me relieved because his reaction to Summer earlier made me realize that he'd be a lot more annoying being a judgmental, self-righteous hypocrite. Instead, he's right back to being the Rick we know rather than trying to pretend he's a good guy. Summer stops him and says that it won't work anyways because the debt is in Rick's name, so he has to approach it. He does so and says he's not scared of it because he's gotten pointier shapes. As I wonder why a next stab got the woman to this point. She says that the product is not important, and she refuses to tell him what the product is. So there is none. I love that he says, "Is this a riddle? Is the answer time?" It's always time. You can't keep making it time. It doesn't actually do all those things. Riddles can't be metaphors, that's so lazy. If the answer is something like love, I'm gonna freak out. I guess he's referencing other pop culture stuff, and that's why he's so mad. And he's misdirecting his anger from that. The information on what the product is gets saved only for those who gain entry to their true home. Translation, there is no product, because if there was, it'd be advertised right away for the best marketing. It's wild that even in this form she's too scared and stubborn to tell Rick the truth. The thing tells him that the mean boss lady turned into this because she worked hard and sold a lot of product and was rewarded in Valhalla, and her identity is no more. Rick asks how he could settle his debts and know what the product is. I love that he really wants to know because it fits perfectly with him being a mad scientist. Of course he's the most curious, even when he's mad. He's asked to join them. Summer calls out to Rick, hoping he's not being tempted by the promise of power. It makes sense that she wouldn't trust him because she knows he's evil. But he's already basically an omnipotent scientist. He created a whole microverse in the show. Pretty sure the promise of more power wouldn't impress him at that point. The crystal praises Rick because he's so hardworking. I guess because he made it all the way here himself. Because how would she know about Rick personally? One of them thought he was Jerry. She somehow expects him to be tempted when told that it'd only take a few years of regular orders to work within her, where they'd obliterate the ego in search of the common good. The idea of his ego being obliterated convinced him to press a button that finally gets the thing destroyed. To be fair, if his ego was obliterated, he'd want to kill himself out of guilt. He surrounds him and his family with force field air bubbles, and I think he makes the whole planet explode, preventing anyone else from being fooled by a pyramid scheme from that planet ever again. He says he only said he was on a hero arc while he was leaving tiny nanocharges everywhere they went. Well, still, nothing forced him to say that, so that's still kind of a narrative cheat. Each nanocharge opens a tiny portal to several quintillions of explosive francium, and he calls Summer gullible. So it makes sense that he was lying earlier, because I did notice that as weird for him. But this comic's so consistently well written that I had faith in the writing and took it seriously, instead of immediately just calling it an out-of-character moment. And he's had tons of times where he was nicer than he had to be to Morty. Jerry says that at least he didn't want him to fail, and Summer explains, yes they do! Specifically, these people want you to fail. They're taking advantage of you. Then after Jerry gets kicked towards a portal, we see Morty hugging Beth for once, and he says he has to go to the bathroom as he's crying. She says, it's okay, sweetie. She hesitates and then tells him to just go if he has to because he can't risk his life by moving when these lasers are pointed at him. So she tries to be a really good mother after that last time she wasn't. I don't know why they aren't allowed to go to the bathroom and eat. That doesn't make any sense. I can understand that being held hostage to control Rick, but that's ridiculous. Conveniently, they get an automatic message that's a reminder in case of the leadership group's total destruction, which says that debt only has meaning in relation to the lender, and the lenders are dust now. Did we need that? Because it was very confusing that they even thought to have that automatic message. What determines when they'll play? Too bad Rick didn't get home quite early enough. He's disappointed that Beth didn't start dinner and just sat there all day. And Summer wonders if this is her punishment for spending time with her dad. It makes them look rude, but how are they supposed to know the truth without being told? And while Beth looks really rude for shoving Morty, she had every reason to at this point. In the next story, some alien brags to Rick that he told him it was all real, as Rick and Morty look awful. Rick insults the alien for finding a dead planet and hopes this was worth dragging Backless back there out of graduate school. The alien says that this planet is the home of all life itself. Really, I doubt that, unless literal magic is involved. Only specific life would be able to survive on this specific planet. How could it be the origin of every planet's life, no matter how different every planet is from it? He says that it'll show you his faith is justified. Rick says it isn't scientific if you have to have faith. I love that the other alien doesn't think Dr. Samstar is right. Rick's here to gloat if he's right. I love that Morty looks annoyed here. Rick's favorite thing is being right. Well, gloating about being right. Rick tells the alien, science is empirical observation and falsifiability. You deal in fantasies. I'm guessing the twist will be that Rick is somehow wrong. Someone that looks like Rick eventually calls him his children, who are the first to find him. And after Rick pretends to react like you'd expect, it turns out he just made a clone of himself to trick the alien and high-fives him. I guess it was all hologram trickery. I mean, they haven't searched literally the entire planet yet. So I don't know why this faith-obsessed guy would give up on finding the creator so fast. Realistically, since he wasn't told how Rick faked this, and wasn't told the light show is all holograms. He says, "Look at them, Morty, the creators of the universe. Maybe nobody will believe me, but I'll know." And why is Morty talking like he totally believes this alien's wild assumption? Wasn't it obvious Rick used a hologram device and cloned himself so he'd be able to gloat that he was right without having to climb through every inch of the planet and finding nothing first? To be fair, it is possible that Rick time traveled to the past to create the Big Bang. After all, he simulated the Big Bang to create a microburst to fuel his car battery. But he canonically hates time travel and calls it garbage science. He literally only time traveled in the show because he was forced to. He ends the story saying that he's gotta figure out how the smug Rick did it because nobody's better than him. So it's not supposed to mean that? Maybe the story is saying that it's one universe in particular had its Big Bang induced by another Rick, who of course either wasn't opposed to time travel or was born long before him. So Rick totally buys into it too. He doesn't realize that it's another Rick made to fool him. He doesn't realize it's another Rick fooling him. If you don't define a god as someone who has to be immortal because of magic in particular and has to pass down magic to his kids, well, Rick can create a universe. And he's immortal. He has the ability to generate a Big Bang that would create a universe, like a god. And with his Project Phoenix, he can't actually die, because he'll wake up in a clone body in another universe at worst, which is probably just like a literal god. He doesn't actually count on all levels because he doesn't have magical powers, but he's able to make any kind of invention and give himself cybernetic enhancements. So functionally that can look like magic powers. He's not a god, which is why this bothers me, as it could have easily just been a joke about the alien being wrong. But it does make sense somewhat, because technically he did make himself qualify for most of the characteristics of one. It's just that obviously someone's not a god if they weren't born as one and can't pass it down. That's not as special. The first story was about Rick destroying the planet of the pyramid scheme to get out of debt, which saves his family as well. Not that they thank him for it, unfortunately. I remember this arc is lasting 3 issues, not just 2. And maybe that's because it being so dialogue heavy with barely any action made it feel like it really dragged out. It is realistic that there's no fighting. They're all office workers, but still. At least the second story was interesting. It's possible to figure it out since Rick can create a Big Bang and is immortal, so he'd be at least kind of a god. But kind of wouldn't be enough for this to happen for a magical reason just because of a technicality. So it has to be bullshit. The other Rick could just be a lying alternate universe Rick who's just using holograms to pretend he's the kind of person he's claiming to be. But everyone just believes it.